Right, I'll get started. I'll give a quick overview of our agenda on bits we're going to cover. So I'll do a really quick, boring slide and get that out of the way about me and everyone, just so you know, obviously, why I'm doing this presentation or kind of what I've learned and how I can help you. And then we'll move into a little bit of background of AI. Then we'll talk about AI in business and some of the uses and how it can help your business. Quickly touch on ethical. I know there's a big kind of, if you listen to Diary of CEO and things like that, there's a big chat about ethics of using AI and the future and how humanity might fare against AI in the future. So we'll quickly cover off any of my thoughts on that. And then I'll give you an insight into how we go about preparing to deploy AI into companies and clients and how we approach it with a structure so that we know we're kind of making continual improvement and we're not kind of blindly just deploying something where we can't measure an impact. And then finally, I will share with you kind of 8 AIs that are my favorite AIs at the minute and talk a little bit about how they can be used. Obviously, new AI comes out every day and new tools and systems, but these are kind of the 8 that I really love at the minute. That's obviously likely to change. So, who am I? My name's Jamie. I'm a co-founder of a company called Everon. Essentially, we're a technology partner. We're based in Leeds, and we specialize in working with regulated industry clients. So we have a massive vertical in the financial and legal sectors in Leeds. And ultimately, we kind of do the what we call keeping the lights on IT, which is the kind of mundane password resets, keeping printers working and staff kind of logged in and working. But we actually have an added value service which we wrap into our IT tech stack, which is all around process improvement and digital transformation. So obviously AI bleeds very well into that with all the leaps and the kind of progress we've made in AI in the last 12 months. We can really make massive gains with clients. And one of the kind of targets we have when we start working with a new client is to try and give them back 30% or up to 30% of the time within a year of working with us. That's through the use of us just understanding where technology might be being used inefficiently or where we can kind of use tech to replace a really duplicated manual task that clients are doing. I've been working in IT since 2003, done some Cisco certification, Microsoft and Google stuff. And my role at Everon right now is literally just to work with clients on the digital transformation and business improvement piece. Hence the reason for this webinar we're on. Right, boring stuff out of the way. We'll get into AI a little bit. So, AI in my world or the tech world is like the buzzword of 2023. ChatGPT is the most well known, I think, of all the AIs. In terms of a really interesting fact about ChatGPT and how quickly it was adopted, it actually broke a record for hitting 1 million users in record time. So from launch to having 1 million signed up users took just 5 days. And to put that into perspective, for Facebook, which was a rapid rise, it took 10 months. For Twitter, it took 2 years. And for Netflix, it took 3.5 years to reach 1 million users. So for ChatGPT to do it in just 5 days shows the impact it had in kind of our society and how it changed people's perception on AI and how it can be used literally overnight or over 5 nights. So a little background into AI. It actually dates back to 1956. Is it officially the birth of AI? There are kind of references to having an electronic brain before that, which kind of was the origins of AI. But officially in 1956 in the USA, there was a AI research lab founded in America. From there, things kind of happened quite slowly until 2010. And that was when we had kind of the birth of IBM Watson. So IBM Watson was essentially the first ChatGPT. So it was based on natural language. It did data retrieval, like knowledge, kind of learning and passing and sharing and machine learning. It was kind of the first time that companies could really get involved with IBM Watson and interact with an AI or feed data into it and pull data out. Around the same time, Google X were looking at AI and machine learning, that kind of stuff. Facebook did something similar in 2013. There is actually a well-known story. I don't know if you guys know it, but Facebook created this artificial intelligence lab, had two different AIs that learned to talk to each other, and they were experimenting with how quickly they could kind of communicate. But what happened was very rapidly these two devices created their own short code and shorthand language, and it was that quick and that effective that the researchers could no longer understand what was going on. These two machines were talking to each other, created their own language and their own model, and nobody could actually see. So they stopped the experiment because they could no longer see what was happening. Fast forward 2022, ChatGPT, I think it was November time, launched, as we just kind of said, hit 5 million users in a million users in 5 days. So it's a massive adoption. Since then, I think with all the media and the news and that kind of stuff, AI is hot topics, and literally daily there's new AI being released. The noticeable one that we kind of see changing how companies are going to interact with AI and tech is Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft are the biggest technology vendor in the world. Most people use 365. Essentially, Microsoft have invested, I think, $10 billion in OpenAI, which is the company that owns ChatGPT, and they're integrating the OpenAI model inside Microsoft 365. So I'll talk a little bit later about what Copilot does and how it can do it, but I think that's going to be the first time that companies will see AI in apps they're already familiar with, and they're not going to have to go out and find apps like ChatGPT to work with. In terms of probably the only other thing I was going to mention was the trajectory of progress and the rate of progress we can make with this sort of stuff is absolutely massive. It's more like a J curve if you were to look at its trend. There's a thing called Moore's Law, which essentially was a historical trend that said every year or every 2 years we double the amount of processing power we have available. So by that logic, what ChatGPT can do right now versus what it can do in 2 years' time is actually going to be like absolutely massive. I think from memory, ChatGPT has an IQ of about 160, 170 at the minute, though that's getting crept up with each revision that they launch. So we're already at the kind of level of general like high human intelligence, and we're stepping well into kind of next level intelligence. So what does this mean for businesses, and how can people use it? What kind of things should people look at, and what are the benefits essentially of companies using it? And ultimately, I think we've hit a point in time where the IBM Watsons and of this world back in 2010 and the early kind of 2000s, when this stuff was first coming out, it was only available to enterprise companies. It was only available to massive organizations with massive resource. I think we've hit a point now where these what were enterprise level tools are now available to anyone from a single person startup all the way through to 100, 200, or a global company. It's leveled the playing field in what's accessible now and how we can use technology. There is obviously a big, I think, fear factor at the minute with it being so new about AI replacing jobs and kind of people being displaced, which I guess we can touch on in the ethical part of it. And I think it's a valid fear, and there are things like that that are going to drive change in our modern world. But ultimately, I think the genie's out of the bottle with this, and we can't put it back in. It's going to be something we'll have to adapt to and embrace. So some quick stats for you, and a quick kind of I guess 4 key areas that I see AI can help with you right now: improving efficiency, decision making, improving customer experience, and improving employee satisfaction. I think the last one, employee satisfaction, isn't really mentioned at all, but I think it's super important nowadays, especially if we're talking about the fear factor among AI. But we'll start off with the efficiency side of stuff. Forbes recently did a study, and ultimately they've determined, or the study came back and said as much as 40% of working hours can be augmented or replaced by AI right now. So it's not to say that that is happening, but the technology is that advanced that ultimately we can gain those 40% of working hours back. In terms of decision making, the amount of data and the speed of data processing and the data kind of collection and decision making that can be made with AI is absolutely massive. There's some stats around one of the call centers using AI, and I think it's got like a 99.9% accuracy in terms of the decisions it makes. So we're not at a point in time where this is a hope and see if it'll get right. It pretty much out of the box nowadays is as accurate as a human would be. A human obviously won't have 100% success rate either. And then I think the two other bits, like I say, customer experience is massive. We don't need to just look at AI as what it can do internally for us in the efficiencies and the decision making bits, which are massive. But I think we need to look at this as how can it help deliver customer experience improvements for clients? That might be through the use of chatbots on your website. It might be through the use of information you can provide people, or automation so people can get kind of the right levels of service without having to wait in phone lines or speak to people. Um, for a story or an example of something we're doing right now, which is kind of helping a client of ours, they're an electrical contractor. They work with a lot of the big museums and AV kind of theatres around the UK. So they have contractors out on site all the time on the road. At the minute, when it comes to resource management and booking jobs in, it's a physical person's job to try and work out who might be the closest or who's the most efficient person to send to site. And then they kind of just have a person that's job is continuously just trying to make those decisions. Ultimately, they don't always make the right decisions, or they can't understand how long it takes to get from point A to point B. So there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way they're working. We're just deploying an AI now within a field service app they use, which the contractors have an app on the phone. So in real time, it knows exactly where those contractors are. It knows the locations of the jobs, but then it can also interact with Google Maps and work out things like traffic. So for every job that gets assigned, it will work out for all the different contractors which resource is closest and which resource can get there quickest. This is obviously going to revolutionize their costs, first of all, because they're not spending time traveling as much. They're not paying as much mileage and expenses out for contractors. And as a result, the contractors can get through more jobs in a week because we're spending less time traveling. So that's a massive one for them. Um, Internally for us, we've looked at AI and we're kind of working from the employee satisfaction angle. So a big problem for me in my industry is staff probably only stay for about 3 years. There's so much opportunity in tech that people, especially the younger generations, love to job hop, and there's always a new opportunity and they can go and get experience in a wide range of things just within technology. So wherever we can look to improve their daily work life balance or their daily job satisfaction, our hope is that we can keep hold of people longer than the average. So if it's 3 years currently, we might get 4 years. Um, as a business, we spend a lot of time in training. As you can imagine, tech moves fast. So we spend a lot of time and resource training staff. So to just get a 3 year cycle out of people is inefficient for us. So we have just launched our own AI service that triages all our client contacts. So if you call us, if you WhatsApp, if you put a message on email or through our ticketing system, rather than it now being one of the techs that has to manually go through and read that, understand the priority and understand the category that it should be in and understand who should work it, we now use the ChatGPT model to do that. Um, it was something that all of our guys love fixing the tech side of things, but they hate doing the admin tasks around it. So we've tried to deploy this AI to remove that admin burden, to remove that bit of their daily rules that they really hate, so they can spend more time doing the tech bits that they actually love. I think not a lot of people look at AI in that way, or think people only focus on the benefits, and that in relation drives the fear that people are going to be replaced. So I think if we can transition to we can make your daily jobs better, we can make your kind of work-life balance better, it will buy people into the AI movement and where we're going. There's some quick stats. So 54% of people, according to IBM survey last year, reported cost savings and efficiencies by adopting AI. So that's obviously more than half. Um, there's a Forbes think that by 2025, 19 in every 20 customer interactions with a company will be AI based. So in terms of having people sat behind chatbots and things like that, I think in the future that is going to disappear and it will be automated. And then in terms of the employee satisfaction bit, Forbes did a similar survey, and again, over 51% of people believe that AI could be used to help give them a better work-life balance and therefore give them a productivity boost because they'd be more engaged with what they were doing. So I guess that's a natural point to just discuss the ethical side of AI and the fears around where we're going, the displacement and that kind of stuff. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I think that there's no stopping this at this point, so we have to be all in with it and embrace it. The kind of analogy I'd give people is, for me, this is like when we did all the farming manually back 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and every farm was full of people that did all the labor by hand. We didn't have any machinery, and all of a sudden, the farmer on a certain field gets a tractor or gets a piece of heavy machinery. All of a sudden, the other farms all around him are gonna have to go out and get machinery to compensate and to compete. Um, Obviously, fast forward 50 years, we don't have people manually doing stuff on farms anymore. We have big tractors, we have all these combine harvesters. Once upon a time, they were all jobs that humans did. Looking at society as we are now, and if you were to go back and ask someone, should we have gone back to that manual way of labor and keep those jobs in those farmers' fields alive? Very few people would probably say no, it's been a bad move moving forwards, because over time we've learned to adapt and we've learned to change it and work in different avenues. And I feel that's where we're at with AI right now, is that it will displace some job roles, or it will certainly limit the need for certain skill sets. But we're at a point where in 10, 20 years' time, I don't think we'll look back as being a negative. It'll be a positive. We won't want to go back to where we were. It's just that we're at that painful point in time of transition, which I feel we would have had in that same farming era. We don't look back on it in the same way. Um, so things that I think are really important are, whenever we deploy AI within a client's network, or we're looking at improving a service or digital transformation, one of the main things we have to do is engage every stakeholder. So that might be the person who's going to be using the system. It might be people who no longer need to do a certain function, or it might be people that just flow through it. One of the things that we find is when people just dictate what's going to happen and they put that software or implementation out there, if people don't embrace it, the process fails and it's not a success. So you have to get buy-in from the key stakeholders, or at least like the majority of the people that are going to be using it, because they're going to be the people that drive this forwards. I think legislation and regulation obviously are some way behind where it needs to be for AI and where we're going. But I know the EU have set up a AI commission, and there's some robotics and artificial intelligence legislations coming. The US have got something similar, and I know the UK apparently have got a Cobra committee that they're looking at this sort of stuff with. But for right here and right now, I think we need to treat AI as if we were talking to a human and we were treating it the way we want it to be treated. And I think the key thing is that AI will learn from your interactions with it over time. So if you start off with really negative interactions, or you're feeding it bad data, your output's going to be negative as well. So whenever we're using something, we need to treat it as we would treat someone. And I think the more we progress down that route, the better the results should get. Okay, so in terms of where we start and how to start, I think it's key that we have to really be analytical about how we approach this. We have to understand what our output or desired output is and where we currently stand. I've got a workflow map that I'll show you in a minute, but whenever we do any digital transformation piece, we literally will draw out or will workflow exactly what that current process is. Because it might be a case that it's easy to automate or use AI in certain elements of that workflow, but then other steps we need to keep the human element. Customer service is obviously a massive one there, where if we can automate all the admin tasks behind the scenes and use AI to drive those efficiencies, we can spend the human time delivering customer wows or customer cuddles. Things that a computer is never going to be able to do as well as a human. We can redeploy time there. So I think it's key to learn those things first off before we try and implement anything. One tool we used, or I used with clients quite a lot, is called Timula. So Timula is literally just a system where you can track time and where it goes. So an exercise we do with people is we'll sometimes give them these Timula cubes, which ultimately every time they change tasks, they just turn the cube over on the desk. What that does is then start a recorder going on a piece of software, and at the end of the day or an end of the week, it will show them where the time's being used or utilized. So, for example, with me, when I first did this a few years back, I would constantly break off when I saw my Outlook notifications pop up because I'd see there was an email come in. I think that'll take me 30 seconds to reply, and I'd break off from the task I was doing and I'd fire that email back. When I used Timula and I look back over a month, I was actually using 50% of my time was going into Microsoft Outlook. So it was a really unproductive way of working. Not only that, because I was breaking off from an actual important task, it took me twice as long to get that task complete in the first place. So it kind of shocked me into how much time was actually being wasted. And as a result, I used a system called Sanebox, which I'll show you in a couple of slides, which basically manages my inbox, and it has important deal with now, and then it has a deal with later. And over time, it understands which emails need to be dealt with straight away or should be dealt with straight away and which can be dealt with later. And it basically will then hold my inbox so I can't see it or I can't see the unimportant emails until 2 points during the day. So I'm more time block focused rather than being dragged off into different things. I think the other thing to remember with this is it's a revolution. Sorry, it's an evolution, not a revolution. And by that I mean that AI is constantly improving. The systems and the tools available are constantly improving. So here at Everon or with clients, we have like quarterly review days. So ultimately, we really analytical about what we're going to do and what our outcomes are. Every quarter, then we'll review and we'll see if we can go a little bit further. Can we add another layer of automation or AI? Can we go a little bit further with like customer service, or can we save a little bit more time by changing the process? Um, it's not going to be a set and forget kind of thing. You're going to have to continuously keep up to date with this sort of stuff. So in terms of what workflow or how we'd start, this is kind of an example workflow for some of the webinar stuff we run. But ultimately, we define each stage and what happens. We define how the process flow works. And then at each stage, we define what we either need to capture or what might happen. So, for example, it might be that I can automate the first 2, 3 steps using AI, but then it might be I need a personal phone call to somebody that's attended the webinar or has asked a question or whatever it might be. That's something I'm obviously not going to be able to use AI or an automation tool for. So drawing it out like this, we can see exactly what needs to happen. We can then, if we need to use different AIs or different systems, we can attach those to the different stages, and then we can set triggers on the different elements to keep the flow moving. This then obviously gives us the ability that when we do those review days, we can turn and look back and see, actually, this is how the flow works. This is where we've made progress. This bit we haven't, and then we can look at improvements and things like that. It might also be that a new tool comes out that would replace 2 or 3 steps with just 1 step. And again, then we can go back and change that. But because we've been really structured and analytical with this, we know we're making consistent progress. This is also something that we can share with the team so they know where their time currently goes and they know where their time's going to be saved. So it helps us buy back in engagement with the team and clients that we use. So I'll just quickly then go through. I've got 8 AIs that are kind of my favorite right now. Um, ChatGPT, obviously everybody knows about it. I use it lots for writing content. So I will have a crack at writing a piece of content. My grammar and spelling's not particularly great. I didn't get high scores in English at school, so I will write something and then I'll ask ChatGPT to review it for me, and that generally then give me different options or enhancements for it. I try not to just ask it one-line questions or one-line prompts because the more detail you give, the better your response. So another example I can give you on that is we did a video for everyone back at Christmas last year, and we had to develop a bit of a script, a high-level script for this video. So rather than just ask for a script for a video with this kind of meaning or theme in it, I actually specified and referenced different adverts that I'd seen that had the vibe that we wanted to do. I put in sentiment that we wanted to achieve from it, whether we wanted to have like a comedy approach. And I probably wrote, I don't know, 5 paragraphs asking it to write the script. And in return, the script I got back actually fitted the purpose a lot better than me just giving a 1-2 line prompt. Um, Dext, I think, is a massive tool. There's a lot of tools like that at the minute, but this is a real quick win for anyone who, well, does any financial sort of accounting or auditing. Essentially, you can scan your invoices, receipts, your expenses. Your staff can have this, and it will then file them in your accounts automatically. 20-30 dollars a month, I think Dext is. Sage have their own version of this, and I think Zero do this in-house now as well. But if you're not using any form of AI or automation for accounting, things like Dext are a perfect tool to be using. Microsoft Photoshop, sorry, Adobe Photoshop is has come on leaps and bounds, and the new features in Photoshop basically allow you to use AI to fill images. So if I had an image that was me but with a little bits missing, I could get AI to fill the rest of my body based on elements it would pick up in the image. So it's super powerful at the minute. If, for example, I had an image and I'm trying to do something and I wasn't looking the right direction, or there was something in the image I didn't like, I went to Photoshop somebody out, but I didn't have the skill set to do it. You can now literally type in a chat prompt in Photoshop, please remove this person or please remove the background, and it will literally go and do it for you. You no longer have to pay a Photoshop developer or Photoshop kind of certified freelancer to do those things for you. Microsoft Copilot, I'll just come back to at the end because I think it's going to be the biggest leap forwards. Sanebox is an email management tool. So that's the one I mentioned before where plugs into my email. I literally get an important do now folder and I get worry about these later. My day then is split when I check at 2 points during the day, this kind of check later side of things. Opus Clip is one I'm using a lot at the minute. So wherever I've done a video or I've been on a podcast or I've got some form of long-term video content, I can upload it to Opus Clip and it literally will create me mini 30-second clips with narration, and it will pick out the soundbite for just that part of the conversation. So if we're talking about, like we talked about the ethics, for example, of AI, if I uploaded a video like this, it would just pick out the ethical bit in a 30-second clip that I can then schedule to go out on social media to drive engagement back to my original video or content. HAL9 is a massive one and one not a lot of people know about, but I think in terms of business decision making, this is a great tool. Essentially, it will allow you to talk to your data set. So if you put your company accounts into it, for example, rather than have to rather than have to have somebody analyze which months were good, which months were bad, why they were good, why they were bad, you can talk to HAL9 and say, why was June this year so much better than June last year? And not only will it tell you the differences, but it will tell you why. So you sold X amount of this product line versus this product line, or the product line you sold in June this year had a higher profit margin than the previous June. So it's massive for anything that's data-based, website visits, financials, case management. If you're a legal solicitor and you could put the case management stuff in there, you could pull out data and analytics just by talking to HAL9. In fact, there's a uh, one of my favorite facts I learned this year around how big companies use data. So both MasterCard and Visa are that good at harvesting data and their analytics with machine learning that they can actually tell you which of their client base is having affairs because of the trend in spending patterns. So they're so sophisticated to a point where they can identify who's having an affair and who's not. The sort of things that HAL9 can do obviously are much more simple and easier to obtain than that. But it was one that I couldn't believe when I heard that stat. Um, Zapier. So just briefly, Zapier is a bit of a automation and kind of um integration tool. So it will take ChatGPT, it will take some of your Microsoft stuff, it will take other different systems, and it will integrate them, and it'll help you use AI within that process. So although some of these others are more specific, encompassing AI tools, Zapier will stitch a lot of these stuff together. So if you've got your process map and you know where you want to be, you might be able to use ChatGPT for one part of it, but not for the whole thing. Zapier will enable that integration across those different steps. That workflow tool I actually showed you, that map I'd created, that example one, was based on a Zapier automation that we did. So it took different systems and stitched them all together with automation and AI in between. So finally, I'll just touch on Copilot because I think this is the one that's going to sort of bring the biggest benefit to companies this year. At the minute, $30 it's going to cost, I think, addition to your Microsoft subscription. But what it will do is it will allow all of OpenAI, which is the company that owns ChatGPT, their AI models to interact directly with all your Microsoft apps. So the sort of things that it can do, again, using this Teams call as an example, if we had Copilot enabled here right now, it would transcribe the meeting in real time, so everybody could have closed captions. It would understand what I'm saying, and it would create tasks based on the conversation. He would then, at the end of the meeting, summarize the key points that I needed to go back and look at, as well as assign tasks to me in my Microsoft To Do, my task system, based on what I said in that meeting. So I no longer have to discuss something in a group meeting, keep my own notes, and then go in and create my tasks. This system would do it completely for me. In terms of things like Excel and some of the impacts that it can have there, if you have a data set, and again, this might be similar to what HAL9 does, and you want to get some information out of it, you can just chat to Copilot and ask it to create you a graph, to create you a pie chart, to give you some information back, or even if you're not sure how to create an Excel formula, Copilot will do that for you by just talking to it. And then there's all the kind of enhancements around collaboration and the SharePoint side of stuff. So some of the stuff come in. There's a component called Microsoft Loop. So it's Copilot based, and if we were talking across the team on email, the email threads can become really heavy, and to catch back up on what's needed or any tasks in those email threads can be really tedious. You can embed now a little bit of Copilot called Microsoft Loop with tasks, and it's real time. So if I complete part of that task, it'll update in everybody's email thread. It's not a static piece of text in an email thread that I have to go around and dig for. So it has absolutely massive advantages across the whole Microsoft universe. And I think it will become the kind of standard go-to AI in the future. As I said, $30, I think the announced price in the last few weeks will get cheaper over time. But if you could save half your time back or 30% of your time back, probably $30 isn't a bad spend as well. That was more or less all the slides I was going to cover. Obviously, there's just a few people on the call, so I don't know if you've got any questions or if anything in particular you want me to answer or give some more insight on. No? Okay, perfect. Obviously, my details are there. like I say, my kind of sole job at the minute is to work with clients to help them with digital transformation. So that includes embedding of AI and things like that. I'm happy to give as much free advice out as I can, and I just want to kind of get this message out there as much as I can. So my details are on the screen. I can share the slide deck if anybody wants that after, but feel free just to message me if you want kind of any one-on-one insight or information, and I'll happily provide it.